It's my birthday, bitch! And I'm kicking it nostalgic. It's Trixie the Golden Witch here on ASE Presents Yig Studios Vlogust, the video series where I do a vlog every single day all month because it's my birthday! And I turned 31. There's 31 days in August, 31 vlogs, whatever. Let's talk about being 31. Did I think I'd make it this long? Yes. Did I think I'd be more successful at this point? Part of me did. Part of me thought I was going to rot in my parents' attic until I was dead. So I've ended up at a place I could have never predicted. Much of my life has been characterized by discomfort and defined by my inability to feel comfortable with myself wherever I was, even by myself. I felt this constant pressure, like there was something missing that I was looking for and needed to complete me before I could actually be a full-on person that could communicate with other people. It's like there was something stopping me from being the full portrait of myself. I couldn't put my finger on it, so it's all I was obsessing about for much of my life, trying to figure out what's wrong, what's going on, why is it like this? But growing up, I wasn't really looking for answers from other people. I pretty much lived under the mindset that it was expected of me to just like be strong about it, to just kind of figure it out. I felt like I was supposed to be the smart one who understood this stuff. I started researching psychology as soon as I started having problems when I was like 14. I didn't know how to research that well, so it's not like I learned everything about the subject, but over the years I've always kept up with psychology. I've always primarily looked into that as like my field of study. All the analysis I do comes from a psychological perspective, usually just trying to get into either a creator's head or a character's head when I make my video, or the audience's head for that matter, actually. But in studying psychology, I could never put my finger on like a diagnosis for myself. There was nothing that obviously screamed out like, this is the condition you've got. Up until like 2 years ago, when I discovered general dissociative disorders, and particularly dissociative derealization disorder, and finally went, that's the one. And then it was a lot easier to deal with, because now that I understand dissociation as really a thing everyone does to some extent, when you basically check out of a conversation or your situation and go into your own thoughts. A lot of people are really not doing this very much. Like, the average person is mostly either just being quiet or, talking or doing something. Like, they're not inwardly thinking about something else that has nothing to do with the situation while not really participating in the situation. You can do this and you still hear what's going on. You're still taking in all the sensory information. You're just not doing anything with it. And it could be that maybe you find yourself reacting to something when something catches enough of your attention that you feel like you can react to it. But how well you're able to actually interpret what you're reacting to depends on how dissociated you really were. I've known people who can be not participating in a conversation, just scrolling on their phone, but they can pick up everything that's happening in the conversation and be ready to respond to it. Whereas I've seen other people, like myself, who, if I'm like scrolling in my phone, I could not fucking be asked what you just said until you get my attention. I'm somebody whose attention has to be gotten, and that's pretty definitional to a lot of the approach I had to my anime viewing. I mean, if you know me as the drop queen, the person who always drops shows within like a few minutes, my biggest video of all time, the one that probably brought you here, is how to recognize a terrible anime in just one episode, which is just a video advocating for dropping anime as quickly as you realize that it's not grabbing you. And it's just because I'm that hard to associate. I couldn't pay attention to something unless it really got my attention. And for me, that usually means an engrossing visual first and foremost. If I am struggling to process the imagery, or if the imagery is just so striking that I want to memorize it, that will captivate me way longer than, you know, having to look at something that I'm thinking about why it looks bad instead of paying attention to what the fuck is going on. I only really started to realize how bad I was at paying attention once I discovered marijuana, because when I smoke sativas, which are the type that makes your brain really kick into overdrive, I realized that I could go on my usual analytical thought pattern without losing track of what's going on in front of me. And that felt incredibly powerful, especially when I started watching like Ghibli movies, where I would often just get lost in the aesthetic of them because there is so much going on that I couldn't really keep the analytical thought process going. I'm just like experiencing it and then not really thinking about it. Whereas after, you know, getting really high, I was able to do both at the same time. And that kind of prompted me to end up smoking way too much. I developed a pretty strong dependence on marijuana over the last like 5 years. And a lot of that is because, again, I'm like trying to keep myself associated all the time. And in particular, just any kind of activity that makes me like feel my body. Like, I constantly shake my leg. Anybody who knows me in person, like, you've probably seen videos about like where I'm shaking my leg. It's been a meme in some of the videos where you can see it, but like people in person are constantly bothered by it because it shakes the whole house. It's just because I have to keep moving. And I think I like smoking in particular because I like to feel the smoke passing through my body. Or, you know, when I eat, I can feel it going all the way through me. And that feeling of like passage of constant movement reminds me that like the situation is still ongoing and that I can't like pause it and go into something else. Because I really did spend a lot of my life on pause in that way. Like, I spent most of my time in my bedroom back in the human content machine era, back when I was digi. I spent a lot of time just kind of staring at posters like this one, or staring at the walls and just kind of like thinking about shit. But the thing is, you can't make it very far thinking by yourself. You just can't. You only have your own thoughts. You only know what you know. And you can do a lot of research and read books and read other people's texts, but like communication through any means other than face-to-face verbal communication is just so much weaker. Like, this video is so much worse than if you could have a conversation with me about this, because then you could ask questions and get clarifications. I could rephrase things in ways you might better understand. If there was something that stopped you and you're like, wait, what the fuck? Like, what did you mean by that? I could tell you what I meant by that. And, you know, the comment section can be good for that too, but oftentimes people have like an anger that I didn't already know how it would have been phrased for them. You know, it feels like, oh, I got a product that's incomplete and now I have to complain about it, as opposed to like, we're having a conversation that I just started with the video. And so, which has always been how I view it. I just have always viewed this as an ongoing procedural thing. Like, the whole idea is that it's a participatory project to make us all figure out what the fuck is going on with us. Like, why are we into anime? Why are we into fucking lewd drawings? Why are we into any of this fucking bullshit? All the weird shit, the video games, the Elden Rings, the Moe and the Guro. Why? Figuring that out to me is core, because I've never wanted to be someone stuck in my bedroom by myself, wallowing in the same thoughts over and over again. That's a sad place to be. And it didn't take me long to figure out that, like, that's what the otaku, like, shut-in lifestyle leads to. I mean, if you watch Welcome to the NHK, which I did when I was 17, which is the show about being a shut-in, and it's a psychological nightmare. It ends up just being this spiral of like, yeah, you're reading all the self-help books, but how do you put that into practice? The vague missing component of being a human that you lack. And it's usually just fear. It's usually a fear of the pain that comes from interacting with other people, either that you are going to receive or cause. In my case, I'm more afraid of causing pain. Nothing really hurts me. It's really difficult for people to say words that are going to hurt my feelings. I've heard it all. I either said it to myself, or if I didn't, then I think it's hilarious when someone comes up with something that I hadn't thought of yet, you know? Like, I like to be bullied, so I don't have a problem with being hurt in an interaction. It's the fact that I am myself a bully, that I am myself so good at finding fault and so quick to point it out, you know. These days I kind of hold back on that because it is an asshole way to meet people. Like, I've just come to realize I have to be around the type of people who can take and dish a certain amount of shit. Like, I like to be around funny people who are maybe a little bit mean-spirited towards each other, but who are nonetheless 10 toes down for their friends, you know? Like, I demand a certain level of loyalty from the people I'm around. I don't feel that sense of loyalty from people who try to be nice to me. I feel like if you expect me to stay around even though you're being critical and harsh, then that's more reliable, you know? And that relationship that you can have with people where it's like, yeah, we have high expectations of each other and we're going to point out when things are wrong. That's what I want out of friends, you know? And each group of friends I've had has been that way. But it's difficult to create that kind of culture on the internet where the kind of content I do is sometimes can be a little bit mean-spirited and punchy, especially back in the day. And I definitely plan to just start going after YouTubers because, frankly, I'm fucking sick of shit criticism online, particularly all the people who are just taking movies and shitting all over them just because, like, they can. Like, if the consensus about a movie is like a little bit underwhelming, then there's all these people who, like, the Critical Drinker obviously is the main person I'm thinking of here, but like does these like over the top whinging fucking nothing criticisms that like don't tell you anything about the actual film and mostly just seem cobbled together from other people's reviews with a couple of really bad jokes thrown in. And I hate them. I want to start like just dissecting other people's reviews and talking about why they're bad, because I feel like I've done a lot on the front of like why stories work, what's good, what sucks, why it sucks. You can find all that on this channel, you know. But why criticism sucks, that's a whole new realm for me to jump into that not a lot of people I think are even capable of the way that I am. So that'll be a lot of fun for me. That's a bit of a tangent though. While the tone of my content is a little bit aggressive, for the most part, I am fairly milquetoast and just doing like straight up analytical stuff that often is wordy and kind of like, you know, fucking high concept and doesn't necessarily create an atmosphere of like action or like, you know, holding each other to high standards. It kind of did for a while back when I was more aggressive with my commenters. Now I kind of promote more of a like, hey, look, we're all in this together. The older I get, the more I realize like you're not going to change anybody and they're not going anywhere. So you just got to start dealing with people and meeting them where they're at. And you can kind of change the overall tone of the conversation or the style of the way things done, but the same types of people are always going to emerge. And, you know, for every like great result of my influence, like a super eye patch wolf, there's someone like Critical Drinker and the EFAP people, you know, like that whole pausing every single fucking frame to talk about it. I'm the first person I remember doing that on YouTube. So as far as I'm concerned, this is downstream of me, and that's why I have to do something about it. Being by myself, figuring out pretty much everything I could by myself, and then feeling the need to work with others to try to get more input. That had initially drove me to try to create like a very close-knit circle of people that were like the only people I worked with. And I still kind of have that, although the group I work with as a group works with other groups and individuals pretty frequently. And, you know, my old group, the procrastinators, like, we had guests on our podcasts here and there, but we really didn't try to involve other people in our work that much, and really not even each other. We were all pretty independent of one another. Everybody wanted to have their own thing and then kind of on the side do the group thing, which meant that the group thing never really got the care and attention it needed to actually succeed. And none of us were willing to give up our own thing, in my case because of money. But like, that was really why it couldn't just become, a monolithic project. I always wanted to make more friends and more connections so I could figure out more of what I'm doing wrong, more of what could be done better, or like more techniques for how to live, find more people who might need my influence also. I've met lots of people where I felt like I got as much out of meeting them as they did out of meeting me, and like, we both just became better off for having even encountered each other. And the more people I encounter, the more chances of that happening. But I'm not going to like walk into a Walmart and talk to the first person I see, because frankly, I feel pretty uncomfortable being in regular society where people aren't thinking about anime or the internet or hard drugs or trans issues, and I'm in a dress, and maybe you can tell, but it's really hard for me to make my facial hair completely go away. I shaved like 15 minutes ago. Your favorite YouTuber who transitioned and looks great, they make a lot more money than I do. I don't have any money. I took hormones for like 3 months, just long enough to start feeling the effects of it, really. I was enjoying the effects. I was not really in a place to handle it or afford more of it or continue getting it. I ended up moving like 3 times across country. I couldn't organize with Planned Parenthood or afford to keep getting the drugs all the time, so I just haven't been able to. I have been getting, actually, the laser hair removal on the face. My dad, thank him so much, last birthday, this was his gift to me, was that to pay for me getting the laser done over the course of what was supposed to be 10 monthly appointments. I've done like 4 because, again, I've moved all over the country. There's only a few of these things in the country, so when I was in Virginia, I was like driving all the way upstate to go to this, just to go to an appointment. It hurts like fuck. Thankfully a little bit less each time. But the effectiveness is basically like each time you lose 10% of your hairs randomly. So I have lost a bunch of random facial hair, but not enough for it to not look like I have it. And it's not permanent, and it isn't necessarily even going to remove everything. And not doing hormones at the same time kind of negates a lot of the usefulness anyways, because the point is that will make me, that also makes you stop growing hair as much. Whatever. I shave my whole fucking body every 4 days or so. That's the main thing I do to stave off the dysphoria. I feel pretty comfortable with myself. I am the healthiest I've ever been weight-wise. I'm like 135 to 140 pounds most of the time, 5'8.5". So, I work out when I get the chance. I had sprained my foot moving to Kentucky, and I was off my feet for like 3 weeks. So right now my body is like really stiff and full of sores, but I'm gonna fix that. What I really want is to be able to move freely. Like, I grew up with my best friend being a dancer who was like dancing to Britney Spears music videos all the time. And I expect myself to be able to do that. Like, I expect my body to be able to dance along to a pop music video. And so every time I can't move that well or I feel too stiff, I feel like, and this is the worst part of being 30 is, I get like really bad fucking back knots all over. Just the 2 decades of being in a desk chair has really fucked up my back, regardless of weight. It actually, I feel it way more now that I'm skinny, because it's like a constant, like I can feel every part of my body all the time, which I couldn't do when I was overweight. So it's like, anything that's wrong with me, I'm hyper aware of. And so, like, at my most comfortable, I can't stop like pressing on my shoulder because like I feel a sore there, and I'm like right now it's this one in my lower back, and I can't stop feeling it. Like the talking is distracting me a little bit, but yeah. So it's like I feel like until I am like physically fit enough to be mostly comfortable most of the time with my body's abilities, I think that helps me to associate a lot more. I really do think a lot of my dissociation was out of personal discomfort, out of feeling like I'm not the person I'm supposed to be, and at this point, it's more out of who I've become, that like my mind is so full of fuck shit from being on the internet for 20 years that it's really hard for me, categorically, like having a conversation with someone, like the first thought that comes to mind is some internet type shit, so I have to kind of put that back and figure out what's like a rational, regular person, or at least what is this person's standard of a response, and again, that's something you only really learn by way of process of elimination and talking to lots of people, failing your way up. I think that's the biggest fear that most people have about communicating, is even dealing with that level of failure. But I've managed to put myself in lots of scenarios because of being an internet person, where I started going to conventions, I started meeting fans outside conventions, I started, having relationships, and all of that taught me a lot. My last relationship taught me a lot of lessons about trust and being a person. I spent a lot of time looking for someone else that I could project everything onto, like looking for outside reaffirmation, basically. Like I felt like I had, like if my thoughts didn't get out there, then they like weren't real or weren't confirmed. And in particular, I was always looking for like a woman who would back up everything I was saying, because I wanted, I projected myself onto women that way, and that like I wanted to, out of my desire to be a woman, I was like, wanted a woman to tell me that the thoughts I have would be validated by a woman. And it's just like this ridiculous gender separation I was doing in my head of like really kind of acting like men and women are like these fundamentally different things. And if only I can, if a woman who is so incredibly different from a man could think the same way as a man does, then what would really be the difference between the two of them? Everyone's different. Everyone has their own thoughts. You have to advocate yourself and believe your own, believe your own narrative and believe in yourself and the fact that the shit you're thinking makes sense without having to confirm it with somebody else. Removing that self-doubt because of the realization that that person was capable of lying about being on the same page, like that all that dumping of myself into someone else and all the trust I had there, like that none of that really meant anything. So that was a really dumb idea to put all my eggs in that basket, So it was kind of like a restart of how I saw myself in my relationships with other people, that like, no, I cannot rely on anybody else to confirm or to be a part of anything. I have to be able to do everything by myself, and then have someone who understands what I'm doing and can help, but not someone who has to be convinced or has to be explained. It's like, if you can help with the parts you can help with, and otherwise I got it, That's the kind of relationships I guess I look for now, and I feel like I was incredibly lucky that I had really good people around me at the time that my last relationship ended, and I'm still working with those people as ASC Presents. So, Riley, Mint, and Bird, when the three of them came into my life, it changed a lot. I grew a lot as a person, because it was the first time I was really hanging out with people that I thought were smarter than me, and also liked me enough to hang around with me. Even though they're younger, both Bird and Riley are people who I see as, at the very least, intellectual peers of mine with much worldlier perspectives than I had. They had been all over the country. They had experiences way beyond mine. So, like, traveling with them, learning their stories, and then seeing the way they operate, seeing the way they communicate with people, and blending myself into that has made me way more connections and allowed me to meet people I fucking never would have imagined I was going to meet. I literally, had lived my whole career not thinking I would meet anybody. Like, I hated myself so much. I didn't want to be in front of any of my favorite creators. I did not want to go schmooze with people I'd heard of, because what was I going to tell them that I do? I wasn't proud of myself in what I was doing. Like, maybe I could show them one of my really good videos, but I kind of thought most of my videos were boring and not the kind of thing you would want to show somebody you just met, unless they're like a fellow writer. Like, the only people I ever pitch my videos to are writers who I meet. I want to become somebody who, when I am standing next to the celebrity that I met at this convention, I can say something interesting to them. And only as much as is interesting, and then fuck off and know when to do that too. Like, I have a tendency to linger and kind of cling to people who are willing to give me the time of day and attention, and seem a little too desperate because I've gotten so little of it up to this point, and I still feel like I'm cherishing it too much. You know, there's an aspect of act like you're gonna see this again, like act like you're gonna be in these situations again, not like you're trying to wring every last drop out of it. You know, you want each of those experiences to be just as good as they can be, and then nothing extra. And you know, I think where I'm at right now is like I've still been pushing myself too hard. I've still been living like a human content machine. I've still been, you know, trying too many things, spending too much money. Way more of what I do has always been off camera than on camera, in terms of like the number of projects that get started and then are abandoned because they don't make sense, or ideas that I have to think about for a while before I figure out why they don't make sense, or projects that capsize on themselves, or that end up going way longer than they are supposed to, or can't be finished because my channel gets taken down, or blah blah blah. You know, like all the bullshit of dealing with YouTube, all those distractions, they take away from me being able to just hit you with the heart of the fucking point and figure out what that is, how long to stay, and when to take off. And I think it's about time to take off in this video. Why? Because I'm almost at 31 minutes, and that just seems poetic. In the recording, I mean. The video is probably like, I don't know, 25 minutes long. It's hard to estimate these things. Right now, the thing I feel the most is a sense of pride in the best effects of my influence as a creator. I've seen so much of my own influence that it's terrifying. It has been the whole time. Like, even back when I was a My Little Pony analyst, and me doing it caused hundreds of channels to emerge that I was personally responsible for judging which ones I was going to post onto the Equestria Daily site, and that, you know, what decisions I made, like, literally burned bridges or created them with people. Just having that much power in relationship to other people's art that early into my career really, you know, was to me a huge burden of responsibility I did not want to carry until my 30s. I have songs about how I was like, why would you look up to me when I'm not even 30 yet? Now I'm 30 and I do feel responsible. I do try to be somebody you can look up to, that seems like they are living an admirable lifestyle at the very least, you know. And I know a lot of people look down on my lifestyle and think it's bullshit and hate the way I live, but for me, the core of what I do is the people work. I want to work directly with people. So for me, like, my ability to have new perspective, to have new things to bring to you, is dependent on me meeting people and getting to know them and getting to see reflections of myself in them that I can then understand myself better to help you understand yourself better, so you don't even have to meet all those people. Like, that's what I exist for. I am here to go out and do the thing so that you don't have to do the thing, but you can still get the perspective, at least some of it. I go out, I eat the burger, and while it's digesting, some of that goes into some of that energy goes to you somehow. You get to eat the half digested burger. I'm like a bird that vomits back into your mouth. I went out and ate the mouse so I could vomit it back into your fucking throat. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. It's my birthday, so give me money. Cash App, Venmo, @GoldenWitchFire. I deserve it. Patreon.com/goldenwitchfire if you want to pay me for a rant. I'll rant about whatever the fuck you want. Send me a DM. I'll tell you if I can rant about the thing. I'm not going to watch a movie I haven't seen for a rant, but I'll rant about anything else. Your favorites list, whatever. Get in there. Substack.com, Golden Witch. That's where I do my writtens. I'm ascending to the